between the United States and Indonesia through some key topics, such as trade partnerships, education, cultural exchanges, and many more. So for today's event, we are already joined here by our two wonderful panelists who will be sharing with us their knowledge and insights. Before calling our panelists onto the stage, I would like to give a little introduction about them. For our speaker, I'm pretty sure that everybody here have already recognized him. He is the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia, Ambassador Sung Kim. With an illustrious career in diplomacy, he has been a driving force behind strengthening the ties between the United States and Indonesia, forging connections on political, economic, and cultural levels. I would also like to introduce you all to our moderator for today, who will be navigating this enriching discussion alongside the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia. He is the press attaché of the U.S. Embassy Jakarta, Pak Mike Quinlan. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, with much honor, I would like to call upon the stage Ambassador Sung Kim and Pak Mike Quinlan.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, selamat siang. I'm Mike Quinlan, the spokesperson for the U.S. Embassy. Delighted to be here, delighted that all of you are here, and also delighted to see all the folks who are online, live streamed here, as well as in Surabaya, in Medan, and all of the American corners throughout Indonesia. So thank you all for tuning in as well. I'm very excited to be here because my boss is right here next to me. And so we are very delighted to have Ambassador Kim here because this month is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And we are Asian Americans and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. So we are happy to share some of our experiences about that, to take your questions, to hear what you have to think and say about this topic and others. But before we do that, let's turn it over to Ambassador Kim for a few words.
Thank you very much, Mike. Selamat siang. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to see all of you, especially our friends from the University of Indonesia, one of the most prestigious institutions in this great country. I actually know firsthand just how great your university is because many of my Indonesian colleagues at the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta are graduates of University of Indonesia, and they do fabulous work. So I'm really grateful that you have joined us. This obviously is a great opportunity for me to talk about all the wonderful things that our two countries are doing together. But more importantly, I want to hear from you. I want to know what's on your mind, because you guys represent the future of Indonesia, and hopefully you will help us build the strong partnership between the United States and Indonesia. In fact, make it even better and more strong, more diverse and deeper than what it is now. So I'm counting on all of you. As you may know, US and Indonesia have a long history together. In fact, we're at the US Embassy in Jakarta, we're very proud that an important symbol of Indonesia's development, the Heritage House, is on our grounds. Some of you may know that this is the place where the Indonesian delegation to the negotiations for the 1949 negotiations with the Netherlands prepared for their important work. We're proud that the Heritage House is on our grounds, and in fact, it's open to the public 5 days a week. So I hope all of you will have a chance to visit this important historic place. It's a reminder not just of our historical ties, but of our shared values. And I think our respect for democracy, human rights, diversity are all things that make the relationship between our two countries so meaningful. The strategic partnership that we enjoy today covers many key areas and issues. We have a robust security cooperation partnership, very important trade and investment relationship, And we also cooperate together very well, very effectively on global challenges like climate and the pandemic, like the COVID-19 that we faced just recently. And every day, the relationship is growing deeper and deeper. And so that's why I'm so excited to be serving as the U.S. ambassador to Indonesia. But I think more fundamentally, one of the reasons that makes our relationship so special is our shared respect for diversity, tolerance, civic freedom. I think make the U.S. and Indonesia natural partners, not just bilaterally, but on the international stage as well. And as Mike mentioned, this is a very special month because we are celebrating Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, and their many contributions to what makes America so great. And diversity, as I mentioned already, is something that Indonesia also values. The U.S. is a Pacific nation, not only because we have the Pacific coast and islands like Hawaii, where Mike comes from, but because there are so many Asian Americans operating, functioning, and contributing in so many different ways in the United States and beyond. 20 million plus Asian Americans in the U.S. with ancestries to more than 20 countries in Asia and India. So I think many of you know all of the extraordinary Asian Americans who are doing amazing things in the U.S. right now. Vice President Kamala Harris, the first Vice President of South Asian descent. Tiger Woods, probably one of the greatest golfers ever. Director John Chu directed that very popular movie, Crazy Rich Asians. Or is it Rich Crazy Asians? Crazy Rich Asians. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is a very famous, talented actor, producer, football player, and wrestler. And we also have very popular singers like Olivia Rodrigo and Bruno Mars. And all of them are contributing greatly to the American society and beyond, frankly. As an Asian American myself, I'm obviously deeply proud of what all of those people are doing. Also grateful that I've had the opportunity to excel in my field of profession, diplomacy, and grateful that America was a society that welcomed diversity. I mean, when I arrived in the U.S. many, many years ago, I spoke almost no English. But then through education, hard work, and luck, and support from family and communities, I've been able to represent the United States as ambassador to 3 great countries, to Korea, to the Philippines, and now Indonesia. So it's a tremendous privilege, and it obviously would not have happened if America was not a society that welcomed immigrants and valued diversity. And speaking of education, I really do think that one of the things that allowed me to succeed in my field was U.S. education. As you know, we offer some of the best education available anywhere. And so I want to encourage all of you, even though you are already receiving fantastic education at UI, to actually think about pursuing some studies in the United States after you finish at UI. We have the Education USA Center right here at America, and they'll be able to provide you information, advice about possibly pursuing education in the United States. But also they'll be able to give you information on other programs besides just universities, like programs like YSEALI, the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative, which is a terrific program for ambitious young Southeast Asian leaders. Or like the Fulbright program that has allowed so many Indonesians to pursue great academic pursuits in the United States. So a lot of information available at America, but also please do follow Embassy's social media platforms, because there you can also get great information about how you can contribute to what we're trying to do here at the U.S. Embassy in Indonesia, which is to strengthen the very special partnership between our 2 countries. Thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing your comments and questions.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's great to hear your perspective as an ambassador, but also as an Asian American during this month. So now I think we're going to turn it over to Shadila, so you could take a poll of our audience. This is something we do frequently, trying to get your opinions on topics of the day. So take it away, please.
That's right. Thank you, Pat Mike. So, ladies and gentlemen, you may pull out your gadgets as we will have a Mentimeter poll before we start our discussion. And we have here a QR code. You can scan the QR code or you can go to www.manti.com and you can enter the code 71373531. Okay, we have 8 people, 9, 11 joining us. Numbers keep going up. Okay.
It's exciting.
Yeah. 30, 34, 36, 40. I will repeat the code. It's 71373531. Okay, we've reached 60, 63. Okay. 70. I think we're good to go. Let's see the poll. Okay. Let's take a look at the poll. Choose the issue that is most important to you. We first have here climate change, end of COVID-19 and better global health, environmental protection, maintaining peace and security, a strong economy with good jobs, excellent relationships between Indonesia and other countries. Okay. The most number goes to a strong economy with good jobs.
And we have a winner.
Yep.
A strong economy.
Economy with good jobs. Yes, that's the result, Pa Mike.
Thank you so much. So as you can see here, our live poll of the audience definitely shows a couple of topics that are very interesting. So we could talk about that. So strong economy, good jobs, not so far behind, eliminating corruption. And in addition to that, human rights for everyone, as well as climate change. It's great to see these topics because these are all very important ones. So I would like to, I know we're also available to have questions from the audience as well. At some point, we'll be passing the microphone around to ask questions. And for those online, feel free to submit your questions too. But let me kick it off with the ambassador asking a question. When it comes to strong economy and good jobs, what do you see the United States doing to help Indonesia in this regard, trying to contribute to its economic development?
So I'm very proud of the strong economic partnership that we enjoy with Indonesia. Our bilateral trade is strong. It's about $35 billion annually. But we're working to make sure that that number continues to grow. And I think we're on we have been on a positive trajectory for the past couple of years. And we have seen significant growth in trade between our two countries, and I expect that that trend will continue. On investment as well, I have encouraged many U.S. companies to think very hard about Indonesia as a destination for investment, and many are interested. In fact, just this week, we have a delegation of 30-plus U.S. companies, some very major companies, Exxon, Netflix, LinkedIn, here in Indonesia to meet with key policymakers and to see for themselves what the opportunities are for growing our economic partnership. And this is mutually beneficial. I mean, I think when U.S. companies engage in business in Indonesia, it's good for them, but it's also good for Indonesia. It will help create jobs in both countries. So I'm quite excited about prospect that our economic relations will continue to grow and help both countries, companies in both countries, and most importantly, people of both countries.
Thanks. there's talk in there about a partnership between the United States and Indonesia, which brings up a good question. And I know that we've got a few of these questions lined up for us to ask the audience. And so one of them is, in terms of our partnership, how long has the United States and Indonesia been partners? And I don't know if we can put this up on the screen, but a couple of the answers: 57 years, 32 years, or 74 years? Any guesses? So I'm hearing 74? 74? It sounds like you are absolutely correct. Yes, 74 years. Very good. We have a very smart audience today, and that's wonderful, and good looking, every one of you. So 74 years. That's correct, and it's a tremendous partnership. What?
No, it really is a tremendous partnership, and what's exciting is that we have an enormous potential for this relationship to continue to grow in many ways, in terms of our bilateral activity together, but also our cooperation on global challenges like ones that came up in the poll just now on climate, on the environment. So next year we will be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the relationship. Of course, it's a very important milestone. So our two governments are working together very hard to come up with events to mark the special occasion. So please stay tuned. We'll be announcing these activities in the coming months.
And so one of the issues we're talking about today, Asian Americans. And so talking about what it means to be an Asian American. And I wanted to just draw one thing. So what does it mean to be Asian American? And we have two examples here. The ambassador, born in Korea, immigrated to the United States. Myself, born in the United States to parents who are Asian. And so two different styles of culture, experience, background, both represented in Asian Americans in the United States. Another question to bring up: how many of us are there in the United States right now? Out of all the millions and millions of Americans, we have 75% Asian Americans in the United States, 25% Asian Americans in the United States, or 6%. 25, 6%, 7. It's actually closer to 6%. So it brings up another question: how important is representation of Asian Americans to to seeing themselves? For instance, how important is it for you to be an Asian American ambassador and diplomat?
Hugely important. I'm deeply proud of my Asian background. I immigrated to the United States when I was about 10 years old. And I feel, I think, a serious connection to Asia, even though I've spent last however many decades in the United States. And I really do think one of the things that makes America great is that it is made up of citizens from many different backgrounds and many different countries. The diversity in culture, religion, ethnicity, I think it really makes America a much richer society. And so that Asian part of me never goes away. It's always a part of me. And frankly, that I think helps me function more effectively as the U.S. ambassador to Indonesia, or previously to the Philippines or to Korea. The fact that I'm an Asian American, I think, is appreciated by the host countries. And I think it helps me understand the host countries more deeply, which allows me to, I think, have smarter decisions about U.S. policy towards that particular country.
Great. Let's see. I think, Shadila, do you have the Menti quiz that we
Yep.
can load up?
Yep. Can we take a look at the Menti quiz? And ladies and gentlemen, you can also pull up your gadgets again to see our Menti quiz.
So let's start with maybe talking about what our priorities are. Is there a question that we can talk about what the priorities are between the U.S. and Indonesia?
Okay, so the question is, the United States and Indonesia partnered together on many issues. What area is not a top priority for partnership from the U.S. Embassy's perspective? That's the question, and you can scan the QR code right here to answer it.
Great.
Or you can go
turn
to www.menti.com and enter the code 11322721. Yep. The United States and Indonesia partnered together on many issues. What area is not a top priority for partnership from the U.S. Embassy's perspective? Is it A, building strong relationships between the people of our two nations? B, maintaining peace through robust security cooperations? Or C, promoting Indonesian traditional food in the region? Or D, supporting the democratic principles like fair elections and freedom of speech?
I think we are starting to see a clear consensus and winner here. See, although promoting traditional Indonesian food in the region is an important thing, it's not our top priority at the embassy, but I know it's something that you actually are interested in doing.
Very much so. I mean, promoting Indonesian cuisine may not be a key task for the U.S. Embassy, but consuming Indonesian cuisine is a very important activity for the U.S. Embassy. I love Indonesian food, and I know that many of my colleagues, American colleagues at the embassy, also enjoy the diverse Indonesian cuisine. So while we may not be promoting it like you are or our Indonesian government counterparts are, we are enjoying it just as much as you are.
That's right. In fact, the embassy has a special program, the Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation. And this year, one of the topics that we are engaging in is preserving the cultural heritage in Indonesia. And so thanks to the ambassador, we have been working with a local partner to do just that. So thank you for that. We do have another Menti quiz. I'd like to maybe push it over to Shadile so we can talk about some of the trade issues.
Yep. The next Mentimeter is about trade. So get your gadgets ready, and we will wait for the QR code. Okay, there you go. You can scan the QR code right here and enter the code 8554-88070. Sorry. And the question will be about trade. All right. So, trade between the United States and Indonesia supports job creation. How much did trade between the U.S. and Indonesia grow in 2021?
This is going to be a good one.
Is it A, 5%, B, 15%, or C, 30%? Okay.
Starting to look like B. A few on A coming up.
Okay. But Mike, maybe you want to reveal the correct answer?
I am very happy to reveal that the correct answer is actually C. 30%. That's right. And so we've written to the fourth largest investor, foreign investor in Indonesia in two-way goods and trade. And that's incredible growth. We're very happy about it. But as I'm sure the ambassador will tell you, there's more to do.
Yeah, no, the trend is encouraging. In fact, I'm delighted that it grew by 30%. But I think more exciting is the potential for further growth in our trade and investment relationship. In fact, our bilateral trade is actually much smaller than our bilateral trade with some of the smaller countries in Southeast Asia. So clearly there's room for growth, and this is why my team at the embassy is very focused on exploring every possible opportunity to increase trade between our two countries and also to enhance investment relations between our two countries.
Yeah, trade between our countries is one way of deepening our relationship, and you know some of the amazing products that we export to Indonesia include soybeans, which turns into one of my favorite foods, which is tempeh.
Yeah, I was excited to learn that U.S. soybeans is best for tempeh in terms of taste, texture, color. So please consume a lot of tempeh because that means more soybeans will come in from the U.S.
Excellent. And so I think we have another Menti quiz. So why don't we move to that one? And this one focuses on education.
Yep. So let's get ready for another Menti quiz. And the question will be about Education USA. You can scan the QR code right here or enter the code 14391682. The question will be about Education USA. All right, let's see the question.
Right.
How many Indonesians are currently studying in the United States? Is it A, 1,400, B, 8,000, or C, 230,000?
Yeah. Quick
Wow.
answers.
Most answers goes to C.
C.
And you can reveal the correct answer.
And
Mike?
so while I would love to see 230,000 Indonesians in the United States, actually it's B, 8,000. I'm sorry. Sorry. But it just means that there's a lot of room to grow. And I know the ambassador is very key on making that number higher.
Yeah, no, again, I think we are seeing a positive trajectory past couple of years, but the number should be 230,000. So we have great room to grow, and I hope all of you will think about studying in the United States, because we really do offer some of the best education available globally.
And it's not just if you think about education in the United States. I know the ambassador himself has gone to wonderful schools in the United States, top level schools. Ivy League is often what you think of. There are nearly 5,000 different universities and colleges in the United States, and there's one that's great for everyone, no matter what you're interested in, if you're studying science or engineering or English or music or anything. So the wonderful diversity of education in the U.S. is a big draw, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, so the top universities get a lot of attention, both domestically and internationally. The reality is that the U.S. offers so many great academic opportunities throughout the country. Private universities, state universities, junior colleges, and the options are really quite diverse. And so there's something for everybody. And you will get a great education at whatever institution you choose to go.
It brings up an interesting point. Education is a value that we share in the United States with Indonesians. But it's also something that I think Asian Americans really appreciate the value of education. At least that's what my mom used to tell me. Mike, you need to get a good education. And a lot of my friends also say that. Do you feel that there are certain values that Asian Americans maybe share in a way that include education, perhaps family ties, and some of those other values that are so kind of typical for Asian Americans?
Yeah, I think there's no question that some of those very important values are shared by Asian American communities in the U.S. But frankly, those values are shared much more broadly. I mean, Hispanic Americans also value education. So I'm a little bit cautious about sort of branding anything as just strictly Asian American. But there's no question that, I mean, my household, your household, and many of our friends in the Asian American community, education was greatly valued, as it is in Indonesia. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think part of the reason why I'm able to serve as the U.S. ambassador, it's a tremendous privilege, is because I received very good education in the United States. And those of you attending UI, as I mentioned, I mean, you are the future of Indonesia in many different fields. And so I know that your experience at UI now will pay huge dividends as you graduate and enter the workforce, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector.
In fact, why don't we see if we have some questions from some of our members of the audience to see what they would like to talk about. I know there's some wonderful audience members from UI here, as well as members of the public. It's great to see a full audience today here at America for Meeting the Embassy. So we can move the microphone down. I believe there's a question in the front.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Ambassador Kim. I would like to ask some question. What were USA commitment to tackle climate changes, especially in a relationship between South-South framework countries? In what way the commitment will be implemented? And in 2022, USA was part of JATP. How you show that the Just Energy Transition Partnership is important and will benefit our relationship in coming year? And lastly, did U.S. Embassy, especially U.S. Embassy in Indonesia, had a budget or funding opportunity that can support a climate initiative or project that were initiated by civil society organization in Indonesia in way to tackle and foster the climate changes issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very important question, and I wanted to talk about JETP, so I'm glad you asked. So one of the highlights of U.S.-Indonesia cooperation from last year is the announcement that President Biden and President Jokowi made at the G20 summit in Bali in November. And this has to do with us agreeing on the Just Energy Transition Partnership for Indonesia. This is a $20 billion package that will help Indonesia accelerate its transition from fossil fuel to green energy and green economy. Very important and very exciting, because this is an indication of the depth of our partnership. It's also exciting because it will help us together work on the global challenge of climate. So right now we're in the early stages. A secretariat has been set up. The Indonesian government submitted an investment plan. And so the U.S., Japan, and other international partners are now reviewing the investment plan to decide which projects will receive funding from the $20 billion package. I think this will advance our common cause greatly. It will help Indonesia. Also want to highlight that there's the reason why it's called Just Energy Transition Partnership is because there is a fairness aspect to it. Because we recognize that as Indonesia transitions from dependence on fossil fuel to renewables, that people involved in the fossil fuels sector will lose jobs, will lose livelihoods. And so the just part of the partnership is to make sure that we're providing them the kind of support that they need to be able to, whether it's to transition to the renewable sector or find some other areas of employment. So great initiative, and I'm very proud that we're working closely with Indonesia on this important initiative. In terms of funding from the embassy for possible projects, I think there are different ways to fund interesting ideas, worthwhile ideas that comes from civil society. I mean, it's not going to be the huge funding that JETP will be providing, but I think through public affairs programs and USAID also is supporting activities related to the climate. So we're always looking for good ideas on how to further promote our shared goals and aspirations with regards to global challenges like the climate.
That's correct. I can add that we are in public affairs interested in all the ideas and all the proposals. And climate change is one of the many topics that we do fund. In fact, we are launching a new program next month focused on the water crisis, impending water crisis in Indonesia. So look for other announcements coming soon from us about how the embassy is participating in this important area. Thanks. We do have some questions that have rolled in from online. So I will provide one which comes from a user who is named Margpan. So Margpan, thank you for your question. The question is, how can the United States and Indonesia cooperate on cultural preservation and the promotion of diversity, including the protection of indigenous rights? And I know that diversity and DEIA, as they're known, are important values for the embassy.
Very much so. I mean, in terms of cultural preservation, I think the main tool we have is what Mike mentioned earlier, which is the Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation. And we actually received many applications for funding under this important program. And we're constantly looking for good ideas, good worthy ideas to be able to fund. And this is one of my favorite programs, not just because it has the ambassador in the title, but it really is a very effective way to support initiatives that helps promote important cultures in Indonesia. DIA, diversity is a core value for our countries, both the U.S. and Indonesia. And within the U.S. Embassy, we take our DEIA practices and values very seriously. We actually have a diversity council that looks at how the embassy is operating and whether we're doing everything possible to promote diversity, inclusion, and accessibility within our mission. But it really should extend beyond our mission to the general society in Indonesia. I mean, I'm obviously grateful that Indonesia shares our respect for diversity and tolerance, and that the government is, in fact, doing what's necessary to help protect and promote everyone's rights. And this will be an ongoing effort. I mean, no society can claim to be perfect in this regard. Even in the U.S., we see problems in this regard. But it is an area that we're totally committed to advancing and improving. And we look forward to continuing to work with Indonesia in this regard.
Thanks. And if you have any more questions online, please feel free to drop them in, as well as the audience here will be getting to you. But before that, Ratu from online asks this question. Hi, Ambassador Kim. From your point of view, how has Asian American culture influenced and enriched American society? And I know you've mentioned a few names of some very top Asian American figures. Are there other ways that we've enriched society?
Oh, I think in so many ways that it would be hard for me to describe all of the ways that Asian Americans have contributed to the American fabric of life. In almost every field, you see Asian Americans, doctors, lawyers, politicians, entertainers, sports figures. And that's great. And I don't want to claim that it's only the Asian Americans who are doing this. Obviously, many different groups in the U.S. are contributing to many different sectors of American life, business, and policymaking. But it is nice that the Asian American community is one of the fastest growing. And so we're continuing to see that influence branching out in many different ways. In fact, if you look at the history of Asian American immigration, it's an interesting political science or sociological study, because the first generation obviously focused on making a good living as quickly as possible. So you saw a lot of small businesses. And then the next generation had the benefit of their parents having worked incredibly hard, often holding 2, 3 jobs to put their children through good education. So they had more options. So then you see the second generation starting to go into more professions that require advanced degrees like lawyers, doctors, accountants, etc. The next generation has even more flexibility and even more freedom. And so that's why we're seeing that a lot more Asian Americans are branching into fields that are more unique and fields that had not been as popular with the Asian American communities. I mean, in the arts, in sports, in music, in movies. And that's a great thing. I think it reflects the depth of immigration history in the United States, but it also reflects the opportunities that America offers to those who are working hard and those who are willing to seize opportunities.
Fantastic. I think I might have seen some interest on this side for a question, and if we do have one in the front with a
Should I stand up?
yes.
Okay. Okay, hello everyone. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Faisal. I have a question about the Heritage Month. As we know that the name is Asian American, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. This is interesting. From what I learned so far about the history of the month, it's all about Asian American movement and about the Asian contributions such as like a transcontinental train, the railways, and first settlements by Japanese in the U.S. But I would like to know more about this Hawaiian and the Pacific Islanders. Why the name it becomes like one, so American and Islanders, as we know that maybe there are the same ethnics from through the history. And I also would like to know about another people maybe who contribute in the U.S. from the Pacific Islanders, besides, as we know that Dwayne Johnson is the Rock. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mike is from Hawaii, so I'll let him answer that question.
Okay. Happy to do that. Happy to do that. So it is interesting. Asian Americans are, in terms of statistics, a larger group within the United States, and they are about 6%. Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, can anyone guess how much percent they are in the United States? It's less than 1%. It's almost half of 1%. It's a very small group. But they're a very big group, a powerful group, as The Rock can attest to it. But in addition to that, there are Native Hawaiians where I grew up in Hawaii who have made incredible contributions, and particularly when it comes to preserving culture and demonstrating that the Hawaiian culture, the Pacific Islands culture, can contribute in many ways. One example is Dr. Sam is a good friend of mine who works in Hawaii, and he is a member of the Nature Conservancy who assists with preserving native Hawaiian species, indigenous species. But the way he does that is by demonstrating the connection between this tree and the stories of his ancestors, and this bird and the stories of the people, and the importance that this piece of nature has with our identity and our culture. And it's a different way of thinking about environmental conservation that really blends that identity as a native Hawaiian and a Pacific Islander. And so that's just one example. But it's really, I think the more you see people like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, people like Jesse Sapolu, who was a San Diego Chargers football player when I was growing up, and others like Dr. Sam, doing great things, contributing to society, I think younger children see themselves reflected in those people. And they say, I can do that too. When someone sees Ambassador Kim as an ambassador, they think, I can do that too. I don't have to be like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and all the other people. So I think that's a big element of it. Thanks for the question. We'd like to maybe go over to another side of the audience, if possible. I did see some hands. I see a number one right there. So why don't we give the questions to her?
Okay. Hello. Before, I would like to say thank you for the opportunity. So I have a question here. Is there any opportunity or a program for young Indonesian student entrepreneurs for exporting to the U.S. as a retail? And are there the things that I have to pay attention for regarding to this? That's it. Thank you.
So let me get that question. In terms of going to the United States to gain experience for
like exporting as a retail. Like we are student entrepreneur in Indonesia and we want to go there for our expanding our business.
Okay.
So I think there are two ways. The embassy has a foreign commercial service. These are representatives of the U.S. Commerce Department. They might have some suggestions on how you might pursue your interest in exporting to the U.S. But the other more important source for you would be the Indonesian embassy in Washington, D.C. Because one of their main functions is to promote Indonesian exports to the U.S. And I know they're very capable representatives of Indonesia from the Foreign Ministry and from the Trade Ministry in Washington, and I'm sure they would be more than happy to give you suggestions on how you might pursue your interest in exporting to the United States.
Great. We do have another question from online, and Fabian asks, what are the key areas of cooperation between the United States and Indonesia, and how have they evolved over the years?
I think the key areas of cooperation are on the academic front, both trade and investment. On the security front, our two militaries have a very strong relationship. That they conduct over 200 activities together. That means almost every day they're doing something together. Now, some are big-scale activities like the Super Garuda Shield exercise that involves thousands of troops from both countries. And in fact, last year, the exercise even involved other key countries in the region, which is a very exciting development. We also cooperate on global issues. On the pandemic, we work together very closely. Not only did the U.S. provide the most effective vaccines available to Indonesia, but longer term, USAID has engaged healthcare workers in Indonesia to build their capacity. And I think that helped Indonesian nurses and other healthcare workers administer vaccines more rapidly, much more effectively. On climate, we just talked about JETP and what that would do for Indonesia, but also for our global effort on climate change. So there are a number of areas where we're working together very closely. And I think in terms of how it has evolved is that, from my perspective, in almost every category, our relationship has gotten deeper and stronger. And I know that our leaders in Jakarta and Washington are determined, committed to make sure that we will continue to deepen our ties on all of these important aspects of cooperation.
And so another question has come in, and it's somewhat related. Alex asks, in terms of the opportunities that exist for people-to-people exchange between the United States and Indonesia, particularly in the fields of education and cultural exchange. And I know that brings to mind for me the Waisili program.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because I think, and I hope many of you will agree that the most basic aspect of a relationship is the friendship between people to people, between Americans and Indonesians. And that provides the foundation for us policymakers to work on different aspects like the economy, politics, security, etc. And I'm really grateful about the warm affection and mutual respect that Americans and Indonesians have for each other. And part of that is, probably a large part of that is based on educational exchange, experiences. Almost every interlocutor that I have met in the Indonesian government, the political apparatus, in the business community, have had some substantial experience in the U.S. Maybe a couple of years in high school, maybe university, maybe MBA, etc. And almost all of them have, I think, very positive impressions from that experience. And that provides the kind of friendship and warmth that I think, will be long-lasting. And sort of it's up to you guys and the new generation to continue to build on that as well. So I'm excited about everything we're doing, including the YSEALI program, the Young Southeast Asian Leaders Initiative. And I believe the largest contingent for the initiative is from Indonesia. It's a great program, and I hope you will look into it and join it, because it's a great networking and information exchange opportunity for young leaders who are, getting ready to do great things after graduation.
By show of hands, how many have been to the United States? Okay. I want to see next year all the hands go up, so feel free to come to my house next year if you're so inclined to. One of the we could look to another question from the audience. I know I saw a hand up here. Yeah, and there are a couple of questions I'd like to get to them. My house is in Hawaii. My parents live there right now.
I'll give you his address later so that you can actually visit.
Thank you for your time, Ambassador Kim and Mr. Mike. I work as a mentor for international students at my university, for high school students who are looking to pursue an education in the United States, particularly my university. I was just curious, related to the previous question, what are some pointers and tips, some recommendations that we can do as members of our own community to help foster a priority for public diplomacy and instill the importance of P2P relationships, like as you mentioned, is a very important aspect of developing diplomacy between two nations. How can we help our friends and our other community members realize this and provide opportunities for them to do so?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much for everything you're already doing in terms of building people-to-people ties and mentoring that you're doing for your juniors. I think there's a lot that almost everyone can do. For one thing, you can build awareness. I mean, everybody knows about America, but those who have deeper experience in the U.S. have the information that others may not. And so sort of sharing what you know from your experiences, I think, will be beneficial to those who are actually thinking about undertaking some activity in the United States. I also think it's, the embassy is working very hard. Mike and his colleague, Emily, who's our cultural affairs officer, are working very hard to make sure that those who have U.S. experience stay in touch with us and help us build that support and friendship. Because everybody's busy. After you come back from graduating, you get busy with your job, etc., and you don't really stay connected to your fellow students or to the embassy. But I ask you to do so because that will help us build that big network that will, in fact, translate to more goodwill, more friendships, and providing a much more important basis for our relations to grow.
Yes, I agree. I think if you want to stay connected with us, our social media is one of our easiest ways to keep in touch with us. We're always interested in hearing stories, and we're even interested in highlighting people. So at U.S Embassy JKT. Follow us, like us, subscribe, and leave your comments. And that's right, a question out in the front. Do we have another microphone?
Well, thank you so much. Let me introduce myself and my friend. We're actually the recipient of uh, United States United States. We are the recipient of the scholarship from the U.S. Department. Yeah, from the Community College Initiative Program. So my question is, we are from quite remote area in Indonesia. So if you have a plan for to hold this kind of event, because so many great people in the remote area never even have a dream or not even have think about this opportunity. But look at us now. We are here right now, and we are proud and we are thankful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that suggestion. I think you're absolutely right that we should be reaching out much more broadly. I mean, Jakarta is wonderful, but there's so much more to Indonesia than Jakarta. And we are trying very hard with a variety of our programs, including Education USA, to reach to even remote parts of Indonesia. But I appreciate the advice that, I mean, we should think about sort of taking this on the road.
You and me on the road sounds like a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do, in fact, have American corners that are located in various cities throughout Indonesia, and 9 of them, and in each one of them, you have an opportunity to meet up with an Education USA advisor. It's not the same as a community college scholarship program, which is an exclusive and very, very excellent program, but it does give an opportunity to learn about the resources available. So I would suggest for folks to check in on those things as well. I did see several hands go up on this side there, and one in the front.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador Kim. My name is Dana, and currently I'm an assistant lecturer at Trisakti Institute of Tourism. My questions related to tourism. Is there a current or prospective effort undertaken to foster closer ties between the U.S. and Indonesia in the field of tourism? Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking that question, because we just recently launched a series to help promote tourism to the United States, but obviously it would work both ways. We just launched it so recently that I can't even remember the name. What is it? Do you know?
Visit USA.
Visit USA. It's a pretty straightforward name. But I think through this initiative, we're hoping to do information exchange sessions, exhibits, etc., to help. We're going to do something at America. Great. Well, so you have a very timely question. We'll be doing something at America when? Date TBD, but very soon,
June.
Probably next month.
So here's an encouragement for you to continue to follow At America. Hi, I'm Emily. So where we will announce, for example, this tourism event, for example, also essay writing and Education USA advising. Please continue to follow At America. Come to all of our events. We haven't decided the exact date, but we're launching Visit USA with Visit College Towns in the U.S. It'll be probably in the end of June or beginning of July, but the date will be announced on the At America site.
Yeah, that was terrific to launch this new series, Visit USA series. We did it with, I think, about 80 colleagues from the travel industry, from travel agencies, hospitality industry representatives. And I sense that there's great enthusiasm, especially since now we're actually over the pandemic difficulties and people can travel much more easily. We're hoping that travel to the U.S. from Indonesia, but also from U.S. to Indonesia will grow.
Thank you. So I think we can turn to this side because I'm starting to see like 3 or 4 hands go up at the same time, but I did see one in the back. Excellent. And I noticed that people are writing their questions on their phone so that they get it right, which is smart.
Hello, everyone. My name is Atniel, and I'm currently studying accounting in University of Indonesia. I've actually been to the States once as an exchange student, and something interesting I learned about the U.S. is how foreign communities are genuinely celebrated and highlighted as a part of the American community itself. And for example, in Seattle, where I was placed, there is this Nordic community that settles in a very specific area, and in that area they have Nordic restaurants, houses, bakeries, and etc. And in return, I feel like the people who live around the area are also exposed to their culture, and they become somehow interculturally educated. In Indonesia, I believe that we also had our fair share with the foreign communities, but I personally feel like these communities aren't as highlighted or celebrated as the ones in the U.S. in today's society. Though I have no doubt that Indonesia has done a very good job in highlighting its local diversity. My question would be, how can we incorporate foreign communities with local communities in one environment in Indonesia and actually letting them grow and could possibly experience cultural exchanges, taking into considerations our long line of history with the foreign communities? Thank you.
Thank you. I think the best way to do that is to continue to value, prize diversity, and to give communities opportunities to demonstrate their uniqueness in many different ways, whether it's cuisine, culture, history, etc. I mean, you're right. In the U.S., there are many different neighborhoods that highlight different aspects of whatever ethnicity groups you're talking about. And for example, I grew up in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles obviously has a huge Asian American population. And there is not only Koreatown, but there's Little Tokyo, there's Chinatown, there's Vietnamese town. And I think it's great to see that, because that is I think a good reflection of what America is, a country made up of immigrants and a great deal of diversity. And I hope we'll see something like that here in Indonesia as well. And I'm actually quite optimistic, because Indonesia and the U.S. do share a commitment to promoting diversity and tolerance.
That's correct. And in fact, one of the other elements of this that we do promote in the United States is human rights. And so Matthew from online asks, what are the priorities for the United States in promoting the democratic values and human rights in Indonesia? And how can both countries collaborate in these areas?
It's another great question. So the U.S. and Indonesia are the second and third largest democracies globally. And I'm very proud that our two countries do share a common respect, common commitment to protecting human rights, to valuing the rule of law. And so we do engage in very close dialogue with Indonesia as issues come up. Even as U.S. ambassador, I'm the first to admit that the U.S. is not perfect in this regard either. No society is. But what's important is that we remain committed to doing everything possible to protect everyone's rights, including those from marginalized groups. For example, for the LGBTQI+ community in the United States, we take their rights very seriously. And even within the U.S. Embassy community, we have a DEIA council that works very hard to make sure everyone's rights are respected. It's an ongoing effort, but as long as our two countries remain committed to doing everything possible to promote human rights, I'm optimistic that we will be continuing to protect everyone and to promoting these rights more broadly and more deeply.
That's correct. All right, we can maybe move some of the questions back to this side. Another hand has come up quickly in the back. Okay.
Hello, Ambassador. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So my question will be related to last year. I think Secretary Blinken and President Biden has launched the Indo-Pacific economic framework, but this is a much welcome engagement for the U.S. in this region. However, we still believe that there's a lot to be done to tackle not just our economic problem for our common prosperity, but also to tackle Chinese influence in the future. So at Indonesian Embassy, what are your role and what is your view about what is the embassy is doing in the future, maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, to solve this problem and to enhance our cooperation, especially in the economic part? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, because I actually wanted to talk about IPAF, or the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, but I forgot to do so. I'm glad you reminded me. This is I think, a critically important initiative that President Biden announced last year, and we're delighted that Indonesia is a partner in this important initiative. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework has 4 pillars in it. There's a trade pillar, there's supply chains pillar, there's green energy pillar, and then there's finances or taxation. All 4 very important areas. And our hope and expectation is that at the end of the negotiations, and negotiations are ongoing, that we will have an economic framework that benefits everyone who's involved in this initiative, including Indonesia. And in fact, we're grateful that Indonesia is actually taking a very active role in the negotiations. They hosted a round of negotiations in March in Bali. The most recent round took place in Singapore. There will be a ministerial meeting for IPAF countries just later this week in Detroit. So it's an ongoing effort, but I'm pleased that all of the countries, including especially Indonesia, is deeply committed, and that possibly before the end of the year, we will begin to see concrete benefits coming from the framework and the cooperation that the framework entails. And I think that's going to be great, not just for U.S.-Indonesia relations, but for U.S. economic engagement more broadly in this dynamic region. So very excited about that. China, I think you've heard our president say very clearly that we will continue to compete vigorously with China, and we will continue to call them out when they engage in inappropriate behavior, whether it's in the trade area or violation of human rights, or aggressive unilateral behavior in the South China Sea dispute, or some of their activities with regards to Taiwan. So our approach has been very consistent, and I know that our leadership in Washington remains totally focused and committed to doing everything possible to protect ourselves, protect our friends and allies and partners, and to compete effectively against China. In terms of the embassy's role, it's sort of everything. Right? We want to make sure that the U.S.-Indonesia relationship is what it needs to be, and that it continues to grow in a very positive direction on global cooperation, on economic partnership, on security aspects. And to the extent that we can support IPAF negotiations or JETP implementation, etc., we will be totally committed to doing everything possible and to working very closely with our Indonesian counterparts. And when I say counterparts, I don't mean just the government. The diplomacy is not just about government-to-government dealings. It's much broader than that. And so even this session, engaging you guys to hear what's on your mind and to get your suggestions and questions really helps us, I think, formulate better approach and policies towards how we can deepen the ties between our 2 countries.
Yes, little did you know that you are a part of diplomacy today in this very room. Let's maybe move the microphones to this side and see if there's a question. I believe there's one in the middle row.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hello, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Kim. My name is Echi. I want to know about the programs because so far as I know, there are so many programs from the Embassy of America related with culture and maybe sustainable and maybe climate change and others, music, movie and others. But how about the education? I mean the education specifically about the teacher, the lecturers, the tutors, the trainers. Because so far as I know, there are only one programs from Fulbright. It is the opportunity for the teachers to exchange to the U.S. That's only one program that I know. But there are a lot of information and also programs and even provided related with the education. It is for the students who wants to go abroad, who want to go to the U.S. In the USA. And how about the program for the teachers and lecturers? Because me as a teachers and also my friends, the teachers and lecturers out there, I really need, like some TOT, training of trainers or others even to make us get a more international exposure about the education. For example, right, modern technology for teaching, modern methods, the way the lecturer or teachers there in the US how to teach. Because I'm sure the better teacher, the better students, the better nations. Is it? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I agree completely with you that better teachers will lead to better societies and better humanity. Great respect for teachers at all levels. I mean, you mentioned Fulbright, but I mean, there are other exchange programs. They may not be exclusive to teachers, but these programs are available for anyone who wants to apply, including teachers. So again, I would encourage you to look at our websites to get a sense of what programs are available. I should also mention that USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, has been focused on education capacity building in Indonesia for decades now. And that's another way that we're trying to help improve the caliber of teaching here in Indonesia. So you might want to talk to one of my colleagues in USAID to get a sense of what they're up to these days and see if there's a program that might be applicable to you and your colleagues.
Yes, and one of the things the United States takes pride in is our English language instruction. And so a big element of what we do with TOT programs focuses on English language teachers and English language instruction. I know we have English language fellows from the United States who are embedded in universities here, virtual fellows as well, and it's another big area that we focus on. But again, as the ambassador said, we are happy to take in proposals and ideas, so please do check our website for opportunities. Thank you. Okay. We do have another hand up in the back, actually two hands up in the back.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Rini Rahmanil Alami. You can call me Rini. I was in undergraduate program in Universitas Gadjah Mada, Yogyakarta in International Relations Department. So this is a great session for me since I have been taking a program or a class about international relations, politics of United States of America. So there are a lot of questions actually since I have chances to talk to the ambassador, but I would make it really short and I would only ask two questions. First, about the international relations project and anything that is U.S. doing towards Middle East, and second, the international relations and bilateral relations between USA and Republic of China. I think that's great issues right now. So firstly, regarding the Middle East relations and to the U.S. itself, we ever heard about American dream, where Americans believe that we are born to lead every nation. We are born to be the best nation probably, but but most probably right now maybe it's not really related anymore to the current ideas or anything. But this idealism, I think, still give a lot of influence on how U.S. projecting its relations or to a lot of countries, whether it is developing countries, developed countries, or even in the low developing countries. So regarding this, in Middle East itself, there are a liberal democracy and there are also the liberations program that is were making by the U.S. itself, where we would like to go to Middle East and then we would like to make all of these countries become have really good democracy and then removing authoritarianisms, totalitarianisms, and anything. But personally, I see that is not applicable to all nations. What I mean in here is that it is not always appropriate. It is not always the most switchable idealisms and principles to every nations that American trying to pursue, trying to influence this country to have the idealism of democracy. That is the first question. So, what is the real? Maybe you can explain the real objective and how to create the bridge between promoting liberations and then liberal values, but also trying to give some nations, probably in Middle East especially, but still have a power of change for themselves to make authoritarianism or their own values. Second question.
Why don't we start with the first one?
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Since I'm being so excited, I'm so sorry.
No
So
worries.
sorry.
I think that's a good question. But
Thank you.
Let's have the ambassador.
Yeah,
ask.
that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. For a moment, I thought I was back in college in my international relations course. Let me answer it this way. So President Biden and other leaders in Washington have made very clear that we remain deeply committed to promoting democratic values and principles in our own country, but also internationally. But that doesn't mean we are looking to interfere in any country's sovereignty. We have respect for every country's sovereignty, self-determination, etc. But what we have found is that respect for human rights, rule of law, democratic values and principles, respect for diversity, tolerance, etc., make better societies, better partners, better friends. And so we will continue to do what we can to promote those values and principles and rights everywhere we can, including in the Middle East. But that is not an attempt to undermine any country's sovereignty. And I think that's a very important distinction. The reason why America is what it is now is because of the values and principles that we have stood for centuries. And I think it's important for us to continue to do that.
Excellent. Let's see. Why don't we go into the front here? I know this hand has been raised for actually a couple of rounds, so finally getting a chance to get to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Adinda, currently studying economics at University of Indonesia. So out of curiosity, as an economics student myself, is there any special reason as to why the United States decided to increase their investment in Indonesia? And also, what is the U.S. view in Indonesia's overall economy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the main reason why U.S. companies have shown greater interest in investing in Indonesia is the recognition that Indonesia has enormous potential. Just look at the natural resources Indonesia has. And then you look at the population. It's a young, dynamic, smart, hardworking population. I forget the exact percentage, but I think something like 40% of the Indonesian population is under the age of 25 or something like that. That's an enormous pool. And just looking at you guys, I sense it, but just working with our Indonesian colleagues in the embassy and just everyone I encounter out there, they're hardworking, smart, resourceful. So not at all surprising that the U.S. and other countries are taking a closer look at Indonesia as a possible destination for investment. I think Indonesian economy overall, if you just look at how well it's done during the pandemic years, I think something like 5% growth annually during the pandemic, that's really impressive. very few countries have enjoyed that type of economic growth during the last 2, 3 years. So again, I think that's an indication of the potential of this place. I mean, Indonesia is already in the G20, and I should mention the Indonesian presidency of the G20 last year was really highly successful. I think exceeded many people's expectations, and Indonesia indeed got a lot of international attention and praise from their presidency of the G20. So already one of the 20 largest economies. It is the largest economy in Southeast Asia, the only trillion-dollar economy in Southeast Asia. But as I said many times, I think the more exciting part is the enormous potential that's out there for Indonesia. So not at all surprising that the U.S. And many other countries are looking at Indonesia.
Fantastic. And I have to say, coming out of the pandemic, I've been here for a little over 2 years, I believe, same for you. It is really welcome to see the amount of energy, dynamism that is starting to emerge now after several years in the pandemic. I know it's a different city. There's more traffic, obviously, but there's also just a lot more activity, a lot more in-person activity too. And so it's good to see us getting out in person. I did see another hand go up just right here at the corner. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Kim and Mr. Mike, for the opportunity. My name is Arvin, studying economics from UI. So I'd like to shift the discussion into a more specific economics. So with the advent of the pandemic, we have found that almost every business in Indonesia is crashing. But there's a very interesting fact that came out of it, which is SME, or small businesses, are the most resilient out of every type of businesses. Now, regarding SME, in Indonesia, the problem with SME is not the quantity, because there's a lot of SME in Indonesia, it's the quality. It's the sense that micro businesses stay as micro businesses, small stay as small, and medium stay as medium, and they don't progress over time. So every time there's a disruption, be it a digital disruption or AI disruption, almost the impact is very great. Now, Mr. Ambassador, I see a very big gap that can be filled with the cooperation of the U.S. Embassy, in the sense that the government, they held incubation programs and training programs for SMEs, but the results are not there. They don't increase in quality in the sense that they don't increase in their scale. So my question is, what is the U.S. Embassy's view on Indonesian small businesses? And are there any plans in the work for maybe creating a training program or an incubation program for SME in Indonesia? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another terrific question. I think you're right that SMEs in Indonesia have proven to be very resilient. The pandemic years were incredibly challenging for everybody in every country, but Indonesia did quite well, and I think SMEs contributed to Indonesian economy continuing to grow. Of course, having a lot of valuable commodities also was a big factor in Indonesia maintaining its economic growth. The way we can help is, I think, in a couple of different ways. One is our Development Finance Corporation is focused on finding investment opportunities in many different areas, particularly focused on climate, but there's also focus on how we can help SMEs as we look for investment opportunities. So that's one way to help. The other is USAID is also interested in sort of economic development that includes minority business owners and SMEs as well. And so that's another way that we might be able to help the SME sector remain more resilient into the future.
Great. And I think we have maybe enough time for one more question from the audience, if we're quick, and right here at the corner.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Ambassador and Mr. Mike. First of all, my name is Muhammad Imam Prabowo. I currently am a first-year student studying economics in University of Indonesia. I would like to ask, in a world where the term deglobalization and rising protectionism, we can say that Indonesia is currently rising in protectionist policies, such as next month Indonesia will enact
an export ban on mining products. How can, with our history of Indonesia and U.S. relations, with trade especially, how can we ensure that we maintain or maybe even expand our partnership in trade, and especially in a mindset that this world is not only a self-interest of each nation, but the interest of the whole world. Thank you very much.
I think you're quite right to put it in terms of global prosperity, because I think too often we tend to be narrowly focused on what's only good for our country. But in fact, if U.S.-Indonesia economic relationship continues to grow, it will have positive effect on regional prosperity and stability as well. I think the protectionism inclination is rising in many countries. But I also think our economists have taught us, and history has taught us, that longer run, it's not a good policy. It's not a good approach. I think open, free trade helps the nations involved and beyond. So I think it is important for policymakers to fight the tendency to engage in protectionist measures. I mean, there's a reason why so many countries signed on to the WTO, right? Because I think there was a recognition that global trade as a whole needs to be governed by a certain set of rules to make sure that free trade, free commerce continues, which will benefit everybody, including the countries involved, but more broadly, regionally and internationally.
So we've gone from economics class to different college classes, community college classes, the native Hawaiian Islands, and more in the past hour or so. But all good things must come to a close. And with that, I'd like to ask Ambassador if you have any closing thoughts on today's Meet the Embassy session.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it very much. Hope to do this again sometime soon, maybe in some remote part of Indonesia. Honestly, I mean it when I say your opinion, your questions, your comments, your advice are incredibly valuable to us, because we want to be engaged in efforts that actually reflect the will and interest of the Indonesian people, because I think in the end that will make our diplomacy much more effective and will benefit both of our countries much more greatly. So I appreciate all of you spending, how long has it been?
Just about an hour or so, that's all.
Is that all? Okay, well, okay. Well, yeah, appreciate your time and interest and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give another big round of applause to our speaker and moderator today. Thank you so much, Ambassador Sung Kim and Pak Mike, for sharing such valuable insights. We hope that today's discussion could bring lots of insights for us and also could strengthen the relationship between our two countries, the United States and Indonesia. Stay tuned for the next Meet the U.S. Embassy session and other At America events by following our social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at ATAmerica. You can also check our website at www.atamerica.or.id. Again, it's been a very good time. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Sadila, and we will see you at the next At America event. Thank you, everyone.